So tonight, 6 o'clock, must-see TV, Bret Baier of Fox News, Fair Balance Unafraid, sits down with Kamala Harris. I've said this would not be happening unless her internal polls were bad. She's struggling with male voters, and a ton of men watch Fox. It is said that she's lost older men, older white men, who went for Joe Biden, himself an ancient white man. So where are you going to go to find men and older white men in particular? Fox News. That's where you go. The problem is you have to answer questions from Bret Baier, who's not a bootlicker. Now, I said before, what's the strategy here? Because there's no way in the world that she can handle a 30-minute interview live, no editing. That's the smart of Fox, so that the left can't complain, she was deceptively edited. No, that's only CBS that does that. It's probably every network, but certainly CBS. We have another instance of it. And I probably won't get to this segment, but I'll get to it next segment, where House Speaker Mike Johnson, who not only talks the talk, but walks the walk on his Christianity. House Speaker Mike Johnson is as mad as I've ever seen him over what Margaret Brennan, the witchy screed who fact-checked J.D. Vance and then was herself fact-checked in the vice presidential debate. CBS is again deceptively edited Mike Johnson, and Mike Johnson is steamed about it. But back to Kamala and Bret Baier. Bret Baier is going to ask her. He's been soliciting questions from viewers. I sent mine in. My question was, you've recently taken to criticizing Donald Trump for hiding and for not releasing his medical records. If this is such a concern of yours, why was it never a concern of yours watching Joe Biden perform in office? We all saw him disintegrate on the debate stage on June the 27th. Square the two. Why was Biden not a big deal, but Trump, of course, is a huge deal? I also want Bret Baier to ask her about her insinuation, her accusation that Trump's tariffs are a 20% tax on every American. Well, Trump's putting tariffs on things like steel, cars from foreign countries, and things like that, which, your average citizen of Linden, the Hilltop, Near East Side, they're not going out and buying bulk steel. They're not going out and buying a brand new car, okay? So the tariffs don't affect them. As much as the 20% plus tax that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have inflicted on every single American, none more so than the poorest Americans, with the cumulative compounded impact of inflation since the day they took office and the precipitous fall in real wages at the same time. That's a 20+% tax that somebody making $30,000 has to pay, because guess what? The person making $30,000 a year has to eat, and they have to buy gas to go somewhere, or they have to take a bus to go somewhere, which also has to buy gas. Unless, of course, it's a electric bus, which is subsidized by the government, which means it's subsidized by you, the taxpayer. I would like Bret Baier to ask that. I would love Bret Baier to ask her about her plagiarism, which is inarguable. And I would love Bret Baier to be the first person to say, you're a prosecutor, you talk about how you're going to stand up for women, you talk about abortion and how we got to protect women and all this kind of stuff. What about the reports, credible reports from eyewitnesses to your husband slugging his girlfriend at the Cannes Film Festival before he began dating you? What about that? How do you stand on that? Are you categorically denying that? Because other people corroborate it who saw it and who know the person who was his victim. But I have a really good idea. That could sound really dry if Bret Baier gets into all that. I have a way that Bret Baier can interview Kamala Harris and make it a tough interview and also make it fun for the rest of us to watch. Do any of you remember the old Nickelodeon game show, Double Dare? On Double Dare, they had a thing they did, unpredictably, uproariously, where they would slime a person. You'd be standing on the stage, you're minding your own business, you're competing in a game, maybe you'd lose the game, maybe you'd do something during the game, and something would happen and they would pour like green slime from above all over you. I think they should, every time Kamala Harris says, I grew up a middle-class kid, slime, anytime she mentions the word duality, this is like a new word she's discovered that she's throwing out all the time. Duality. Hopes, dreams, aspirations. Slime. Every single time. Oh, I can dream, can't I? I can dream. I, of course, will not get that. What I will get is Kamala Harris on a podcast yesterday. I'm not going to say the name of the podcaster because it's sacrilegious. But it's a black podcast host, very, very popular throughout the United States, listened to by a lot of black men. Listen to Kamala Harris trying to buy black votes in the upcoming election.
So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position. In terms of my immediate plan, I will tell you a few of the following. One, as it relates to the economy, which is a lot of what you have addressed. Look, I grew up in the middle class.
Nope.
My mother, worked hard, raised me and my sister. And by the time I was in high school, she was able to afford our first home. I know what it means for an individual and a family to have home ownership.
She'd get slimed for that answer if I was controlling the bucket full of the green stuff, because she did not grow up a middle-class kid. How many middle-class kids do you know, both of whose parents had PhDs from Cal and were teaching at Stanford? None. That's the answer. Reparations. What utter nonsense. People who never owned slaves should pay people who were never slaves reparations. Stupidity. Utter stupidity. Now, she also did a fair amount of lying in this, because besides reparations, another giveaway, she wants to legalize marijuana. What does that say about how she views black men? This is why she went on the podcast, to win black men over. You're all a bunch of weed heads, so I'm going to legalize marijuana.
I was the most progressive prosecutor in California on marijuana cases and would not send people to jail for simple possession of weed. And as vice president, have been a champion for bringing marijuana down on the schedule. My pledge is, as president, I will work on decriminalizing it, because I know exactly how those laws have been used to disproportionately impact certain populations, and specifically black men.
Well, she ought to know, because here from PolitiFact, in the same story where PolitiFact rates it false that she had an affair with Willie Brown, the San Francisco mayor, while he was married, they both acknowledged the relationship, but they rate it false that she had an affair with him, because they say Willie Brown was separated from his wife. I was not aware that that allows you to sleep with a guy and it not be an affair. In the same story where they rate that false, PolitiFact says this about Kamala Harris in her role as Attorney General of California. Admissions to California state prisons for marijuana and hashish when Harris was California State Attorney General from 2011 to 2016 is higher than 1,500, according to the California Department of Correction and Rehabilitation data, 1,974 during that period. So she knows how many black men were put in prison because